Hi guys, welcome to this video. We're just very briefly going to look at program design. So when you have code to write, what is your coding plan or your coding program, coding design that you have in mind? And this is just to think at a high level of your code. So what is going to come first? What's going to come second? Is there going to be a loop? Is there going to be a selection structure, a switch, an if, inside the loop, before the loop, after the loop? So it's a high level kind of brainstorming of what you want to do in your code before you start writing code, that you can just think about it a little bit from a higher perspective and end to end. Otherwise, once you start writing code, you start narrowing down and focusing on that particular portion that you're working on, and you're not necessarily working in a very optimal way in terms of what your code needs to do overall. So it's always recommended that before you start writing code, that you just think a little bit about the design of your code. Now, it's a very high level task to do, and I'm going to use the code that I used in the neatness presentation, and I'm going to actually show you this final solution, and then I'm going to remove things that were added after the design so that you can see what design actually led to this solution. So I'm going to do it a little bit in reverse. Now, remember, we showed you guys two methods to basically go and work out or just put some design on the table. And those two methods were the flowcharts that you can use, and you can draw some flowcharts on a piece of paper. There's also very wonderful software tools that you can use for flowcharts. And then the alternative option that we showed you is just basically writing some pseudocode. Pseudocode is just basically writing in plain English what your program should do, and it should be kind of structured in a programmatic way. So yes, even though you're just writing English, you are kind of somewhere between just verbally or describing your program with text and actually coding. It's halfway in between, almost, more or less. So yes, you're just saying display menu. You're not showing all the individual printfs, for example. And then you say capture user choice. And then you say determine choice. If it's option 1, do this. If it's option 2, do this. Or case option 1, do this. So you're just describing it with English, but you're also more than that. You're giving already structure to it and logic to it. There's a logic design to what you're writing. So I'm not really going to show that to you again. You can go and view the presentation material we've given you before on that. This is just a quick review of it. So that's why here I'm just going to show you a solution, and I'm going to backtrack it to the higher level design that was used to get to this solution. And surprisingly enough, that's why I also chose the neatness presentations code. Surprisingly enough, you can actually use, especially on the entry level and fairly basic programs, you can use commentary to actually be the design, or to start off with commentary as your design, and then you start filling in the code in between your commentary as you move on. So let me show you what I mean. So if we take a look here on the screen, here's the code as we saw before from the neatness presentation or review session. And basically what we're doing here is there's a couple of variables here, and then we have a do while loop that will display a menu to the user until the user selects the exit option. So here's the menu display to the user. It says draw a square, draw a rectangle, draw a triangle, or exit is option 4. Capture the user's input, and then we use a switch to determine what was the user's choice. If it was 1, print a square. There's the code for it. If it was 2, print a rectangle. There's the code for it. If it was 3, print a triangle. There's the code for it. If it was 4, that's the exit option. We want to just simply break. We want to have the 4 in here because sometimes you will also test for invalid input. We did not in this case, in this program. But if you do, you don't want 4 to be seen as an invalid input. You want it to be seen as a valid input, but it just doesn't have any action to it other than terminating the program. So basically we're just breaking the switch case so that we can jump out. It's going to get to the gauge. Sorry, it's going to break the switch. It's going to get to the gauge. It's going to find that you have entered 4, so the do while is going to stop running, and it's at the end of the code. Alright, I see sometimes students put in return 0 here. Yes, you can do that if you know that there's nothing further below this switch that needs to happen before your program terminates. So just be careful with that one. Otherwise, if you're not 100% sure, just start off putting in a break. Don't put a return 0 just yet. Only do it when you're really sure what you're doing. Alright, so let's then, now that we have quickly looked at this code, I can quickly build and run it. So there we go, there's the code, there's the menu, draw square, draw rectangle, draw triangle. Select option 1, I hit enter. There's a square, even though it doesn't seem like one, it's 3 by 3. Hit enter again, then I select 2. There's a rectangle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 3. And a triangle, option 3. There you can see it's a triangle starting with 1, then 2, 3, 4, and 5 hashes. And then if I select option 4, my program is done. Alright, so not a very too complex program, just a small menu driven program here. So let's see, this is the solution, and what would have been our design for this. Well, let's start at the top here. So we have our main function, everything is now implemented in the main function still. One of the very big things, very high level things that needs to happen is display menu until user selects exit option. Alright, so that's a very high level thing that needed to happen. Then inside this we have a clear screen and print menu. So you can see it's tabbed up from that. So this is inside that. We can maybe even put it against it if you want, and later on you can space it. Then we want to act on the user input. This is all in a loop. Display menu until user selects exit option. So this kind of gives you an idea it's a loop, and all of this needs to happen in that loop. Then act on user menu selection. So here we can just say if or case option 1. Case option 1, print a square. Okay, and then that's the code that we wrote for that. Then basically here we have case option 2, print a rectangle, and there's the code that we developed for that. Alright, and here we have case option 3, print a triangle, and there's the code. And let's put this one in as well. Case option 4, do nothing but stop the switch. So act on user menu selection. Here we can maybe just put in brackets that we think of using a switch, and here we actually mention it. This is small little detail. We could have said here pause output. So that was the getch that we have there. So that means clear the screen, print the menu, act on whatever the user has chosen from the menu, and then pause so that the user can see the output according to the menu option. Okay, and then this is just the end of that loop, and this is the program end. Program ended successfully. Okay, we don't even have to have that. That's not really part of the design, but okay, let's leave it. So there's the program design. It's basically the commentary that I'm now going to flesh out. So here I'm now going to say, okay, display the menu until the user selects the exit option. Okay, so that's a loop, and it must keep on running until the user selects the exit option. So here I'll start creating a do while. And then I know that condition that I have to create there has to be linked to the option that I want to now display in this do while. And all of this needs to go into this do while, of course. Like that. Okay, display the menu. Okay, we get into the loop. First, clear the screen and then print the menu. So it's a little bit more detailed, not just display it. Then act on user input. So we could have here said capture user input. Okay, just to be a little bit more detailed here, clear the screen, print the menu, capture user input. Now act on the user input. In other words, test it to see what it is. So you can see here we're going to have a whole bunch of printfs. Here we're going to have a scanf. And let me just spice it up so it's clear and easy to see. Here we're going to have a switch. And then inside the switch, we will have cases. And then after the switch, we will have a gauge or something to pause our screen with, so we can see the output from the switch. So as you can see right there, I've basically now designed my program. I've thought on a high level, okay, I want to get a menu and the user must choose an option and then give a corresponding output. How am I going to design my program? This is it. Here's a high level design of it. Now I can go in detail and focus on printing the menu, capturing user input, testing the inputs, and then in detail. So I can create all the cases, and then in detail, how do I print a square? Go and write the code for that. How do I print a rectangle? Go and write the code for that. So now I can individually focus on every section, knowing that I've already considered end to end how the program works, or what needs to happen in my program where. So I don't have empty spaces left that I still need to somewhere, some time. And usually if it's a test, your time runs out and you get hurried and you don't think clear anymore. So even in that regard, this is a great lifesaver. But start, if not already, start making use and train yourself to design, even just briefly. I mean, this doesn't have to be a very detailed design. Just a couple of minutes, make a design, and then you can start getting cracking with your coding. Guys, thank you. That was it. Have a nice one.